podcast that you're listening to is being presented to you with the cooperation of the SJ Network. If you're a person who needs a publicist and you want to appear on podcasts, contact Stephen Joyner at s-j-network.com. Let's get on with the show.
Today's guest in the Sherpa screening room is Czarina Michaud, author of Slanted and Disenchanted. She told the Sherpa that she's a fan of the show.
That sounds impossible. Maybe she meant she wants to sell him an air conditioner?
Wait, you're trying to open the show with an air conditioner joke? Sorry. Not a fan.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. We would like to give you a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial simply by heading to www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles of audiobooks and podcasts, including this one, to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now, the one and only Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, on Fridays, ladies drink free at the Sherpa Chalet nightclub, provided that you are a Lady Wildebeest.
Coming to you from Sherpa Chalet in beautiful downtown Mount Podcastia, it's time for entertainment interviews in the Sherpa screening room. Grab an aisle seat and a bucket of popcorn, but don't crunch too loud or you'll miss the show. Now, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, Rebels, and welcome to the Sherpa Screening Room, a presentation of Too Many Podcasts. It is I, Jim the Podcast Sherpa, asking you the one musical question. Is this thing on? Can you hear me? I'm actually breaking in a new microphone that the lovely Sherpa bride gave me for Christmas. And yes, this is my first recorded show for 2022. So welcome, and I hope you guys had a safe end of 2021, even though I know it's a little late to hear it this late in the year. But anyway, it is a very special episode today because the interview that I'm having with my guest today, her name is Czarina Michaud, and she is an author, and I didn't find her through super publicist Steve Joyner. No, she actually reached out to me. She is a fan of the show, and you can do that too if you've got something to promote, like some music or a book or something like that or whatever. And you do that by emailing me at jimthepodcastsherpa@gmail.com. So anyway, Lisa reached out to me, and I found her story was fascinating. So we set up an interview, and guess what? We had a lot of fun too. So I really enjoyed getting to know her, and I think you will enjoy getting to know her too. So let's hear from my guest today, Czarina Michaud. Bonjour, mon rebels of the Sherpalution. Why am I greeting you like this? Because my guest today is actually coming to us from Paris, France, where actually she lives. She's on a vacation. This is her home, and she is an author of the book Slanted and Disenchanted, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to get to know her. Her name is Czarina Michaud, and she's right here. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Bonjour. Thank you. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. It's finally good that we meet. We've been corresponding a little back and forth, and I got to know you a little bit, and I got to sample your book, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I haven't finished it yet, but I like the story. It's very different. And we're going to kind of get into this a little bit more, but I know there seem to be little samples of you in that book. from what little of you I know.
There might be. It might have been inspired by some aspects of my life, from being Italian American and loving rock music. So yeah, no, I definitely pulled from my life, but I've never been in a rock band, and I'm a terrible guitar player. So I think that's where the fiction comes in.
So how did a nice girl from New York City ended up in Paris? You kind of took the long way, didn't you?
I did. I didn't grow up like loving Paris. I didn't have like Eiffel Towers in my room and dream of French things at all. I was working, I moved from New York to Los Angeles first and kind of stumbled through adulthood in Hollywood, which was entertaining. I have stories. And then I moved back to New York and I worked in fashion, and my bosses were all French. And just for fun, I started to take French classes after work at Alliance Francaise on 60th Street. And then after a few years, I kind of was like, why don't I use this French? And, it was right before I turned 30, and I was going to go to Paris for a few months as like a sabbatical. I had been working since I was 13 years old. So I was like, let's just do something really crazy before, I get settled down. And that was 14 years ago. And I never came back. I mean, I go back to see my family, of course, but I'm a Parisian now. I met my husband. I made a baby. My son is French. He prefers speaking French, which is so funny to hear because I didn't think, I never imagined I'd have a child who would answer me back in French. And we're here, and I'm a writer now instead of working in fashion. So, which means that I get to wear sweatpants and I get to eat.
That's always a plus.
It's always a plus when we get to consume food and wear sweatpants all day.
I just call that working from home right now.
I know. I think we're all like experiencing that right now. The joys of like not having to get on a train or drive to work. I think we're all very comfortable in our Zoom occupations.
So what's one thing about living in Paris that people should probably know that they don't know?
Okay. When I moved here, I got such an education on bread, and I mentioned that in my book, how the father says there's no bread in America. After living here, I do understand that comment. And that was taken from my bosses at the job that I work, my fashion office. They'd always say, there's no bread in America. And I would just be like, what are you guys talking about? It's like aisle 7 and, and Wallbaum's or Graciti's, whatever supermarket. And they were like, that is not bread. Now living in Paris, I get it. There's not that boulangerie, the bakery culture. And not all bakeries are the same. And there are good bakeries and there are really bad ones. And you have to find the perfect baguette. And every neighborhood you're going to live in is going to have like a choice of 5 bakeries, and you have to try all of them. And you find your favorite bakery. And it sounds so stupid, but it's part of the culture. We get bread in the morning and then we get it at night. And there's a line out the door. And you want to get it when it comes out of the oven. So when you crack it open, the steam comes out. It's incredible. My son and I, it's our favorite thing. I pick him up from school. We go to our bakery, and I'm putting up finger quotes for everyone because it is our bakery. And we know when it comes out of the oven, it's about 5:15 because school gets out at 5. And you crack that puppy open. It's crusty on the outside, melts in your mouth on the inside, and the steam comes out. And that's something that's really special to me. And I think the French would really appreciate me hailing their bread as the best bread ever. So that's one thing I guess I picked up from living here. And also I learned a lot about wine.
When you eat the baguette, do you have to put butter on it, or is there a certain thing that you have to put on it to make it like truly a French experience?
You don't need to. I don't. If I'm feeling decadent, I'll put a pat of butter on it from Brittany, a nice half salted butter, which is really good. But then I end up eating the whole baguette. Then you end up finishing it because it's so good. So I try and hold back. But yeah, you can put butter on it, jam, confiture, anything really. Or my Italian side likes a little olive oil with some salt and pepper in it. And I dip it in that.
Okay. So when you were growing up, there's a lot of different inspirations from what I can see in, like I said, in the short time that I've gotten to know you. You said you were involved in fashion. You like music. What were your goals when you were a kid? Did you think about being a writer, or was there something else?
Well, I've been writing every day since I was like 7 years old. My mom bought me a journal, and I would just like write everything that happened for the day. My journals are so boring. Even my high school journals, when they're supposed to be kind of juicy, it's like we went to the mall and somebody stole something from Woolworths and the police came. It's like a reporting of like what happened in 1995 at Roosevelt Field Mall. And I just always wrote, but I never really thought that it could be like a real job. I was kind of like, well, I write, but what do you really do for a living? And so when I was in fashion, I was working in finance and in IT, but I'd go home and write. And then when I moved to Paris, that was how I was able to make a living, because a lot of newspapers, magazines, they like to hire expatriates to write about the French experience. So that's how I got my toe into writing professionally. And then I wrote this book out of really nowhere. I just had this idea in my head and I just wrote it, and I had finished writing the first draft in like 3 months. It just like kind of poured out of me.
Now, is there going to be more sequels? So are we going to hear more about these characters, Carla and Peter from Slanted and Disenchanted?
Yes, we are. I finished the first draft of the second book, and now I'm revising. I'm going back into it for the second draft, and it should probably take about a year working with my editor. But yeah, where they end up. Does the band continue? Does he go to Paris? Does she find herself? Who knows? It's all in book 2.
Now, you said that you worked in Hollywood. Were you a writer in Hollywood, or did you do something else?
No, I was a background artist, which is fancy talk for saying I was an extra. So if you want to see my work, you can see me kind of behind Angelina Jolie in the carnival scene in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, the scandalous movie set where she got together with Brad. P.S. The extras we knew beforehand. When the story broke, we were all like, yeah, we knew that.
Big shocker.
Big shocker. We were kind of like, there was a lot of like flirting on the set, and we were like, interesting. And then when the story broke, I remember all of us extras were calling each other being like, they should have just asked us. We would have told you what was going on. But no, I was an extra. That's how I paid my rent. I was non-union. So it was $54 for 8 hours. And I was on so many, teen dramas. But the one show that I was on that was really freaking cool, and I don't know if people remember this show. It was on NBC, and it was called American Dreams.
Okay.
And it was based in the 1960s. And my extra part, if it could be called a part, is that I got to reenact scenes from American Bandstand. And it was really cool. Like it was set in Philadelphia. So the main characters would go to American Bandstand and they would see the bands play, and they would have modern bands reenact scenes from old footage of American Bandstand. So I think like Richie Sambora played Eric Clapton when he was in the Yardbirds. We had Jennifer Love Hewitt as Nancy Sinatra. Hilary Duff was the Shangri-Las with her sister. And our job was to dance around all these people. And it was really like American Bandstand. But the hair and makeup, I have photographs that I would take that I have from that time period, and they look like they're from the 60s. Like my hair was in a huge beehive. They would put us in mini skirts, fake eyelashes, full on makeup, where we would have to break for lunch and we would go to like the shopping center on Sunset Boulevard. And I remember this one man, he was so confused because all the extras, we all would go to lunch together, and everyone looked like Buddy Holly, Ronnie Spector, rest in peace. Mm-hmm. And everyone was full up, out and done. And this guy goes, what are the Shananas in town? Like, it really was very confusing to people because there was like 100 of us. And that was my favorite job in the whole entire world. It paid terribly, but it was one of the best jobs you could have at 21 years old living in Hollywood.
That does sound like a lot of fun. Definitely had that kind of experience to say that you were part of something.
Yeah, I have clips of it too. My husband found all of the clips where you can kind of see me, and he made like a little reel of me like dancing and like, just partying to like all this like 60s music. And so he made like a little reel of all my teeny tiny clips where you can kind of see me in the background, and we know it's us. No one else does, but
you won't make it an official demo reel or anything like that. You can go in if you look closely.
Of my fine acting abilities. No. But to really pay the rent, I was also a waitress. So, and I worked at some really kitschy, like 70s kind of diner over in the Hollywood Hills. It actually recently just closed, which really makes me sad. It was called the 101 Coffee Shop. So RIP 101 also. And I worked there for a few years. It was one of the best waitressing gigs I had. And my countertop, everybody came in. We had Selma Hayek came in, Brad Pitt, speaking of, came in, Jimmy Franco, came in with James Franco. Jason Statham, he was a big one. Table 7.
Do you remember any particular customers in the diner that might have left a lasting impression for you?
Well, yeah, Jimmy Franco, I didn't know he was an actor, but he was just so nice. He always sat at table 1, which was our counter. Table 1 was just like one seat. And so when you're at the counter, you're always talking to whoever's there, because you're just, the proximity so close. And if it's kind of quiet, it's the same people that come in. And so like one day I asked him, so what do you do for a living? And he's like, oh, I'm an actor. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's LA. Everyone's an actor. So you're not impressed. And I'm like, anything I've seen you in? And he's like, oh, I played James Dean in a TV movie. But at the time, he was already in Spider-Man, which I found out in hindsight, like in retrospect, I found out later. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Really good luck on your acting. But he was like totally famous at the time. And it occurred to me years later, because I watched Spider-Man with a friend. And I'm like, oh my God, there's Jimmy. And he's like, Jimmy? I'm like, yeah, table 1, Jimmy, egg white omelet with, he's like, yeah, he's like kind of super famous. And now I know he's like a superstar, and that's that was the beauty of this restaurant. It was just so not pretentious, and it wasn't, it was just really a mom and pop kind of vibe. It had a jukebox, and, and Jason Statham was always a few seats down, and he was really cool too. But he told me he was like in action movies, and I'm like, that's cool,
Was he didn't like threaten to beat anybody up if like the coffee wasn't right or anything like that, right?
No, he's a sweetheart, really. They all really were. Really, everyone says actors are jerks, but I haven't had that experience. I actually found them delightful. The more famous I found, the nicer. It was always the ones who played some role in some TV show that no one knows about. Those guys were always kind of jerky, but it was like the real famous ones, they were always super cool.
Right. You didn't have to want to deal with the guy who don't you recognize me? I was Boy with Bag in E.T.
Yeah, you don't want to deal with that. Actually, I met Jennifer Lopez. She was really cool.
Yeah.
She was awesome. A friend of a friend got an invitation to Ben Affleck's birthday party. And again, I was not invited. I'm just like the person who's like, I'm available. I chaperone and come to the party with you. And it was when they were together the first time around. And the party was like really intimate. It was at like a club. And my friend goes to me, I dare you to go wish Ben a happy birthday. And I'm like, are you really daring me? You're going to double dog dare me. Okay, I'm going to wish him a happy birthday. And it was Ben and Jen. They were together. And so I went over, I'm like, hey guys, hi Ben, happy birthday. And he was like, so totally cool. Happy birthday. Thanks so much for coming. And at one point, they kind of were looking at each other like, who the F is this? And that was when I was like, made my exit. I'm like, anyway, great party. And my friend and I went to the bar and we had a complimentary glass of champagne. We danced and then we went home. Jennifer Lopez is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. We all know she is, but in person, it was like her skin was like liquid gold and she smelled really good too.
It's not just the cameras on her. It's just a natural glow for her.
No, yeah, I think she's very, very beautiful. So that was nice to know. It was nice to get confirmation. Okay. I slept well that night knowing Jennifer Lopez was beautiful.
Okay, so we got to talk about your work here before we talk a little bit more about J-Lo and Ben. You're a music buff just like me, and I guess that was the inspiration behind Slanted and Disenchanted?
Yes. I'm definitely a music buff. My dad was a roadie for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and he was a drummer. And so I grew up listening to, my mom really likes dance music and like Madonna and Prince. And then my dad really likes prog rock and jazz. So I kind of had my brain is split in two between nerdy rock music and then total pop music. So I try to get both of them into the book.
The book, and I think it's been noted, it's definitely a pop culture reference extravaganza.
I kind of pulled in old conversations I used to have in high school where it was just a movie always came up or an album cover, or like Slash from Guns N' Roses. He always came up in conversation in high school. If I could think of one person that always came up, it would be like, oh, like Slash. Like, so I had to put Slash in there in like some, some comment, because he was like such a like standard for us. I guess maybe it's kind of like my Gen X side coming out, like a 90s thing, but it was just always like Slash. Like, if someone played guitar, we'd be like, oh, well, he doesn't play like Slash. Like Slash was always the standard for hair, guitar, leather pants.
What were some of your favorite bands?
Nirvana, 100%. Like, I'm not going to lie. I did cry when Kurt died. My friends and I did like a candlelight vigil in her backyard on Long Island. And, it was very dramatic. And our parents were like, who is this guy? Like, we were so confused. We were like, you guys don't understand. Kurt died. And they were like, who is he? Was he in 7th grade? Like, whose class is he in? And we were just like, our parents don't understand anything. So Nirvana was a big one. Of course, Pearl Jam. Kurt Cobain's wife, Courtney Love, was a huge one for us. I mean, she was like the standard for us, like mid 90s girls. We loved her. I mean, I went to all her concerts. And then, I'm not going to lie. I did fall into the Spice Girls trap. I did like them. I know that's not rock, but I got seduced by all the dancing around, and everyone got to pick their own Spice Girl who was like them. I identified Ginger. But of course, Guns N' Roses, love them. Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 is probably, well, I love 2 more than 1, but that's like a standard, and like great rock albums and videos. Holy, the music videos. Like, I'm the MTV generation. So, I mean, anything that was on MTV, whether it was like pop music or grunge rock, it resonated, and it like shaped who our generation is.
Are you like me, that if somebody asks like a music trivia question and you can just bang it out, the answer really fast, and you're like, why don't you know this?
It depends. Yeah, it depends. I'll like make like comments. I'll just be like, well, like Steve Albini, clearly, he produced that album because he's totally into mic placement. And I make all these like nerdy references, and they're like, 1, who the F is Steve Albini? And 2, mic placement. I'm like, mic placement is very important. You can't just play with the knobs when you're a producer. The mics have to be like so in the studio, which is what I learned reading about Steve Albini. But yeah, I'm constantly saying things, and my husband, but even with classical music, I'll be like talking about something, and I'm like, well, it's Chopin. He died of, tuberculosis. And so and I'll just reference like Chopin and just be like, what?
All right, we got to talk about the book now. Now that we've gotten to know you a little bit more, why don't you let everybody know, kind of like a little synopsis about the book, so if they want to check it out.
So it's called Slanted and Disenchanted, which is a play off the Pavement album, Slanted and Enchanted, which is one of my favorite albums growing up. And I like the idea of being disenchanted because the 2 characters, it's Carla and Pete, and they're 20 years old. They're just about to turn 21. And it's sort of that moment in life where we're wondering, like, are we adults yet? You never quite know when we've technically turned adults. Yes, technically is when we're 18, we can vote. Some countries you can drink, but that doesn't mean anything, and that's like the big theme of the book is like, what does it mean? What does adulting mean? And it alternates between the perspective of Pete and Carla, where the idea is that I wanted the reader to be smarter than the characters, so we could see all the misunderstandings, but they don't, because they respond to things differently, and they see the same situation completely differently based on their experiences, their background, their upbringing, their gender. And so I really played with that kind of he said, she said balance. And the thing that brings them together is their love of pop music and rock. And I purposefully made them on different ends of the spectrum of rock. So he's into like Phish, The Grateful Dead, Miles Davis, Art Blakey, Led Zeppelin, just that real, progressive jam band, classic rock. And I had her on the other end, feminist rock, Riot Girl, punk. And they kind of have this kind of like battle of the bands kind of feel to it, which is super fun because it reminds me also of growing up where all the boys listen to this jammy stuff, and us like punky girls were like, oh my God, why is this song 12 minutes long? They can't get to the point in 2 minutes and 33 seconds like every other punk band. And I actually like both sides of them. So I was able to like play with that debate because I see both sides. I understand, why is a song 12 minutes long? That's excessive. But then maybe it can be because it's influenced by jazz and bluegrass and there's other influences in it that makes it 12 minutes long. And so I definitely play with that. There's tons of 90s, pop culture references from the movie My Girl. I don't think you're there yet. Maybe not. The movie My Girl, which was such a movie that was always on HBO growing up. And for all of us, we were just saying, it's such a sad movie. And I'm not going to tell anyone what happens, but the kid from Home Alone is in it. It's really sad. And the Soul Asylum video with all the missing children, that was always on TV, and it was very scary. And we were always scared of like vans driving down the street because we were like, are we going to be in the Soul Asylum video? So I kind of played with some of these pop culture references. And it's funny, the response that I got from readers, they were like, oh my God, yes, I was scared of vans too after the Soul Asylum video. And it's so satisfying to meet other readers on the internet who are like, yes, I completely remember having this same exact conversation with my best friend in 1994. And it's just so cool because I feel like I'm creating this community of 90s nostalgists. Not that we're stuck in the past, but we're just kind of laughing at how, kind of dramatic everything felt. So, and then they go on a cross country road trip, a big tragedy happens in our country or the world, however you want to look at it. And that's kind of serves as a catalyst on them being like, okay, why don't we head face first into being an adult? And to them, that means getting into a rusty van, a rusty Buick, and driving across country to do a kind of greasy dive bar tour. And on the road, they learn about who they are and they come into themselves. They find each other, but they also find themselves and answer some questions that they're going to have to, work through even more in the sequel.
It's really a story that's, I think, very well suited to being an audiobook, which is what you gave me the link to, by the way, so everybody's wondering. Because, as you said, there's a lot of he said, she said perspectives, and you hear the two different voices in the book expressing that, where they relive an event and, they both look at it, they both have that different perspective on it.
Yeah, the audiobook is great because it is, the book itself has the cinematic quality. So I've been told that's a big, that was a big comment coming back from early readers and current readers. And, so once I heard that, I wasn't going to do an audiobook, but then once I heard how cinematic it was, I was like, all right, let's do an audiobook. And the casting was really, it took a long time finding the voices because everyone was good, but not quite what the voices called for. And I did play with getting actors that had New York accents, and I couldn't find anyone. I had people do the New York accent, but it wasn't authentic, and it seemed almost comical. Right. So I just said, okay, just scratch it. And I had actors who have more of a neutral accent. And they killed it. I'm really, really happy with both actors. They were a delight to work with, and they really worked with me because there were a lot of cultural references too, because Pete is French American and Carl is Italian American. So it's there are parts of our culture that foods we eat that aren't in the English language, like brajol. And the actress, she's not from New York. So I had to literally record myself saying these were these words and be brajol, spoyatel, with the New York accent too.
I don't know if this was intentional or not when you did the book, but I find it interesting that Carla works in a photo developing store, because a lot of the book really is a snapshot of a lot of different things, not just the music scene of Long Island, of suburbia, at that point in time. And I just thought it was odd that out of all the jobs that she had, she's the one developing the pictures, and that's how they come together, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to pick a job that doesn't exist today. Mm-hmm. To just really place the reader into like the late 90s, 2000. It takes place in 2000, but I wanted to put the reader there without so much saying it, showing and not telling. And then also I pulled from my own background. That's what I did after school. I worked in a photo shop, and the scene that is in the book is a real scene that truly, truly happened. Somebody dropped dirty pictures off at my photo store. A cute boy didn't come in. That didn't happen. But I was just developing the film, and I was with my boss, who the boss in the book is based on my real boss. And him and I were like bumping into each other as these dirty pictures were being developed in the machine behind us, coming down the little carousel in the window. And we were so scared that people were going to come in or children. And I was so embarrassed when the guy came back and got the pictures. I mean, today I could have called the police, but this was 1999. So I just, I was 17. I was so embarrassed. And so that was a real scene.
There definitely seems to be some inside jokes about being Italian, about the family talks loud. Well, they're not arguing. They're just having a conversation.
That was my little wink at my Italian upbringing. Like Thanksgiving at our house, that was a true Thanksgiving. Like we didn't have turkey. We had like manicotti. Somebody had to pick up the prosciutto at Glen Cove and the mozzarella. There was the roasted peppers. And it was just kind of like, why are we even calling it Thanksgiving? Can we just call it we're eating all together? It's just a meal. And I had to go downstairs and get the leaf from the basement. It was this huge thing and to make the table big, and everyone's screaming across the table. My grandfather at some point would get mad at my cousins because they would complain about something. And then all of a sudden World War II would come up and we were talking about Normandy. My grandfather was at Omaha Beach. So then World War II would come up and we're talking about D-Day, and it's Thanksgiving, and my cousins have no patience. And it just, that was pretty much a typical meal at my family's house that I had to just bring to life because it is so funny to me. Even living it, I'm just like, this is my family. This is my family. And so, yeah.
Did you have the other Italian things like the towels in the bathroom that you're not allowed to use and the room that you can't go in because that's for company?
Yes, we had the towels we couldn't use in the powder room. Then we had the couch that we couldn't sit on in the living room, but we could sit in the solarium. We couldn't sit in the living room. We could sit in the solarium. And the reason why it was a solarium was because there was one skylight. There was one tiny skylight in the ceiling, and that's what brought all the sun in. Yeah, and then oh my God, we did cure prosciutto and meats in our garage. And I did go to school smelling like cured meats. And I did have one of my teachers sniffing my hair because she could smell soppressata in my hair. And she announced that to the entire class. And I was mortified because I smelled like cured pork product in the 6th grade. So that happened. All that in the book, that all happened.
Well, kids can usually smell a lot worse at that age. So if you smell like superstar, that's not too bad.
My teachers seemed to be really excited about it. And my family was in the food business. So she'd always ask, she'd be like, what's going on at the store? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm 12. I don't know. I just want people not to make fun of me. That's all I want.
And for the listeners out there who are from Long Island, as we said, Lisa lived on Long Island a good portion of her life. And a lot of the book you said is pretty much a love letter to Long Island from the places that you would go.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, like I poke fun at Long Island a little bit. But all the places that are in the book and little references are completely real. Like, there's one reference I make to, Pete's dad flirting with the French lady at the music school that was on Hillside Avenue. That was a real place. That's where I learned how to play guitar. It was this little music school that's actually now a Ralph's. It became a florist, and then now it's a Ralph's Ice. And the woman, she chain smoked. She read French fashion magazines, and all the women were topless. And I was 12 or 13, and I would go with my little classical acoustic guitar and learn my scales. And her name was Lisette, which I did put in the book. That's her true name because I don't know if she's still with us. I don't know anything. And that was like my little homage to her because she was so special to me. And I had gone to this little music school for 3 years, and then I stopped going, and then I moved to California. And then when I came back, it was a Ralph's. So the store where they jam out in the music store, that's a real store that's still there. It's changed names a few times, so I don't know what the name of it is now. But I tried to keep true. Hildebrandt's, there's the one old fashioned diner from the 50s that still exists, is on Hillside Avenue. And that's where they get ice cream together on their 21st birthday. So I really tried to, immortalize places that were really special to me. And, when I was home on Long Island over the summer, I stopped into these places and I brought them a book just to say, you guys are in a book and I hope you like it. And I hope I did the business justice, and it's in a book forever now. So
it's also, like I said, what about a photograph, a really good photograph of suburbia too, because you make a lot of reference to like, well, I had to stop and get coffee. We had to go to the mall. We took the train into the city.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely stopping to get coffee. And then it's like, there's so many places you can go, when you get in your car, there's like, you pass 4 or 5 delis on the way to your deli. You can go to any, but you have your specific places. And it's like what I said about the bakeries in France. I think in New York, we have the same thing with delis. Like we have our deli where we know the guys behind the counter. We know they're going to make a nice sandwich that's going to have enough meat on it. We know my deli that I like on Long Island, they wrap my iced coffee in plastic wrap so it doesn't condense all over my car. Like that's an important detail, but it's not important for everyone. And maybe they go to the deli closer because they get hot coffee. But who knows?
With these characters, like we said, it's kind of a little bit of you, interspersed in obviously your life growing up in there. What do you think that they would be like today?
That's such an awesome question. When we were all in confinement, I was finishing the book and I was like, what? How are my characters dealing with this right now? And I was writing like kind of like mental fan fiction about like what they were doing. And I and like politically, I know exactly where they are, but I'm not going to get into that. But, I always see things that are happening in 2020, 21, 22, and I'm like imagining how each one are going to, respond to it. And because they're so ingrained in my brain and who I am, I know exactly how they're going to respond to things. I know the dialogue. But during the confinement, I had them in France, in the little region where Pete comes from, which is Alsace, which is on the border of Germany. And it's such an interesting part of French history because it has gone back and forth between being occupied between France and Germany. So, everyone has a French first name, but their last names are very German sounding. And the architecture is very Germanic, and they have their own language, which is Alsatian. And when I go there, I did a lot of research. I spent a lot of time in that region and learning about it, learning history, because it's not close to Paris at all. It's about a 6-hour drive. And I picked this region because I wanted to learn something while I was writing. I could have had him come from Paris, but I just said, you know what? Let's try something new. Let's learn something while writing the book. And during the confinement, I had them in Alsace and on a farm and just isolated with their guitars, maybe their children, I don't know, and lots of animals.
I forgot to mention at the beginning of the interview how this interview actually came to be. Could you tell the story of like how we ended up setting up this interview?
Now I'm on the spot because I actually forgot the name of the trombonist, right?
Aubrey Logan.
Yes. That's, I was just on, I love jazz, and I like when Spotify recommends other artists who aren't like the most famous. So I just kept going through the recommendations. Like I'll keep pressing, and I found her, and it's a woman, everything was men, all jazz musicians. And I think she's incredible because she's really in a man's world. I mean, there's not many women who are playing, this kind of music. And so I just wanted to know a little bit more about her because, writing a book about musicians, and especially a female guitarist who knows how to, knows her instrument so well. I wanted to learn a little bit more about, a musician who also knows her instrument well. And I came across her podcast and she was such a delight on the show too. And so I felt really satisfied to know that she was as cool as her music.
She really is. That wasn't careful editing. She was just that cool. She was just a lot of fun to speak with and just a very down to earth person. She's pregnant, by the way.
Oh, that's great. Oh, well, I know you don't know me, but congratulations from another mom in France. I have a 6-year-old, so it's a party.
So Lisa had heard the podcast interview with Aubrey, and then she said, I would like to come on your show and talk about my book. And I said, absolutely.
You were so great. You got back to me. Thank you. Really. Yeah. I mean, I was so happy to hear from you because it's just, I don't know. I like meeting other hosts of, podcasts who are just putting their, just putting themselves out there and sharing with us, musicians, writers, artists that we probably wouldn't know about otherwise. Because we can go on any website and read about the most famous person, Billie Eilish, and they're great. But I also want to know what other people are doing who don't have, the muscle behind, the publicity. So I love this podcast culture we're in right now because we're all learning so much.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it too. That there are people who get to tell their stories, and you literally have a book and another book coming out, obviously, and you get to promote as well. We'll get to the promotion part in a second. Don't worry, I didn't forget.
No, this is fun. I love talking about all these these stories. It's it's not every day I can talk about when I was young and carefree. Meeting Jennifer Lopez, I'll tell my son this story and he'll just be like, "What's for dinner?" Please don't say veggies again.
The next book, you're working on it right now. When should people expect to release? Any time frame yet?
I'm shooting for spring 2023.
Okay.
But knowing the publishing industry, it's probably going to be closer to summer, which is fine because it's set in a place with warm weather is all I'm going to say. So maybe it'll be a fun beach read. And it is. I definitely, in book one, I kind of held back on some of the experiences because, when we are living with our parents, we aren't as expressive in so many aspects of adulthood. So in book two, I will share that they won't be living with their parents and then they'll probably be a little more involved in their adult life. And I'll leave it at that. That's my G-rated response.
The book is very enjoyable. I said to Lisa, I'm up to the 8th chapter. I haven't gotten to the deep part. I'm about to the part where the two characters, Carla and Pete, meet and they start playing together. And obviously there's a lot more going on that's going to happen after that. And furthermore, obviously in the sequel. We don't usually do this part on the Sherpa Screening Room, but I know because you like the show, I wanted to give you the opportunity to do a little shameless self-promotion.
Shameless self-promotion. Shameless self-promotion.
And you can let everybody know how they can follow you and find out about the book as well.
Well, I'm on all of the social media platforms. I actually just joined TikTok. I can't believe I did it. It makes me feel very old. At least once I realized I don't have to dance around, I'm not going to do it. I'm not filming myself dancing around. Okay. I became a writer, so I didn't have to do that. There are ways around being an author on TikTok without making an ass of yourself. So
that's what I told people. I said, I'm on TikTok. I said, but I'm not dancing. You don't want to see that.
What is that? Is that a requirement for the platform? Every time they'll be they recommend for you and everyone's dancing around. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's embarrassing. So anyway, I'm on all the platforms. It's Lisa C. Michaud, which is Michaud. And I'm on Instagram, on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and I answer all comments and messages because I love talking. If no one noticed, I like chatting. So I talk my husband to sleep at night. He's like, are we done talking? And I'm like, wait, I still have 7 more minutes of content. Can I just talk a little more? He's like, okay, go. So yeah, Lisa C. Michaud at all of those social media platforms, or lisacmichaud.com.
So since you've written about it and you're over there in Paris, is there any little thing that you miss about living on the United States?
Yeah, I do. I miss sarcasm. No, I'm joking. The French are very sarcastic. Well, yeah, I miss, this is going to just sound so stupid, but it's a small thing. I miss the supermarket being open on Sunday. I am outside of Paris, actually. So now we're going to get into where I am. I'm 45 minutes. I call it Long Island, France. I'm on the French RR outside of Paris. So we take a 45-minute train, and we're in like this really small, cute medieval village, but everything's closed on Sunday. So it's like, which is great. It's a day of rest. But if you don't have eggs or milk, you're just like, okay, just got to wait till Monday. And some places in France, everything's closed on Monday too. So we're lucky.
So do you do the quick refrigerator scan on Saturday night? Like, quick, milk, eggs, bread.
We do. No, we do. Saturday is like, my son hates it. We go grocery shopping on Saturday. We went this morning, and he's like, why do we always have to go grocery shopping on Saturday? And I'm like, because everything's closed on Sunday. Like, I'm turning into my mom. Like, everything's closed on Sunday. And he's just like, oh, okay. And, so, I mean, that's such a crappy answer. I wish I had something a little juicier. The internet. If everyone watches Netflix on our street, we can't watch Netflix. It'll just keep rotating, and it won't connect. Our internet's a little medieval. If I could say that.
I think the French government's going to have to get on that, Lisa.
They're right. Well, we have our elections coming in May, so I think they're a little busy, and it's going to be a juicy one. I don't follow 100%, but I just know when my father-in-law starts pounding his fist on the table, things are getting crazy. So.
Okay. All right. So we've been talking to Lisa Czarina Michaud, the author of Slanted and Disenchanted, and you can get the book on anywhere where books are sold, right?
Yeah. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, your independent bookstore will order it. We work with, IndieBound. So if you want to go order it from an indie bookstore, you can put your zip code in, and the indie bookstore closest to you will order it, and it'll come that way. But I mean, it's Apple Books, Google Books, it's everywhere.
It's all there. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a real treat.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you know what? Before we let you go, could you do a French Viva la Sherpalution?
Okay. Yes. Viva la Sherpa Revolution.
If that doesn't win me over in France, I don't know what will. It'll be me and Jerry Lewis.
Oh my God. They love Jerry Lewis here. How do you know that? It's like a huge thing here. How do you know that?
Oh, lady, I wrote the book.
I'm impressed.
Thanks so much for coming, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup et au revoir.
We're on that internet thingy at Sherpalution.com.
Thank you so much to Lisa Czarina Michaud, the author of Slanted and Disenchanted, for coming by the Sherpa Chalet. And I had a blast talking to her. And be sure to check out her book, whether it's on paper or audiobook. The audiobook is really great, and it's just a wonderful story. Definitely not one for the little kids, but an enjoyable adult novel. You can maybe have an adult beverage after you finish it. I don't know. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care. Okay. So next week we will be back in the Sherpa screening room, and we will be speaking with another author. Her name is Christen Stovall, and we'll be talking about her fantasy novels. And in the meantime, Monsieur Bruce, it is time to say au revoir. And don't forget, you can hear my show on any of your favorite podcast apps or Sherpalution.com, which is also where you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and yes, TikTok. Till next time, folks, I can't say it as nice as she can, but Viva la Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to the Sherpa Screening Room. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. I'm Mr. Bruce, and this has been a Sherpalu Studios production. Viva la Sherpalution!